chair, Peter? Where'd you like me to sit? Just anywhere? Okay, great.
Alright, well you tell me when you want me to start it.
Well, there's just one person. I know it's I'll tell them that during Q&As they can put questions in the chat and I'll pass. If I think it's a good question, I'll ask.
Good. Mischievous. I was going to wear a white shirt, but I think it was I've never met you before. No, we've never met. Heather. Yes. Pastor Bill.
I'll tell him something.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's wrong, I'll tell him.
Yeah. You are.
All right, wow. Okay, you hear me all right? All right, we plan to start in just a couple of minutes. And if you're comfortable, you can come closer. If you don't want to come closer, stay where you are. But feel free to move forward if you want to. So we're going to start here in just a couple of minutes. Well, while we're getting ready, let me go ahead and make a few announcements. On July 29, today, each speaker, following their time, you have 5 minutes of question and answers. Then longer question and answers can be taking place at the after all the speakers have done. This program will be on YouTube after the event. Encourage you to silence your cell phones. There's refreshments and stuff on the inside. There's side tables inside if you have an interest. There's restrooms in the building and straight over there on the right. And we will finish sharp at 8:30. Peter says so, so it has to be true. There's literature on the tables and back. Mainers for Responsible Immigration. The Gray Town Committee meeting will be on the 4th Wednesday, August 26th at 6:30. The location will be announced on the Gray Republicans page, grayrepublicans.org. Okay.
I think we're ready now.
All right.
All right. Let's all stand and we're going to begin with the word of prayer. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we say thank you, one, for the good weather day that you've given to us. Thank you for each one that you've brought to be here today. And Lord, you know the condition of our nation. You know what's going on. And we come before you, just as Jehoshaphat did, being overwhelmed with a lot of things. He said, I don't know what to do, but my eyes are fixed on you. So Lord, our eyes are fixed upon you. And we ask for you to guide us. In Jesus' name, amen. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you can be seated. As you know, our nation is on the brink of a disaster. The situation is critical. The future of our children and our children's children are at stake. The freedoms and liberty that you and I have enjoyed may soon be gone. The fact is, they are already slipping away. The scripture says we cast the lot, but the outcome is of the Lord. Come November, we cast the lot, and it's our obligation to give it our best. We are like a spear. We are the shaft, but the head of the spear is essential to get the job done. There is a man who has been appointed by the providence of God as the head of the spear for this area. He's devoted endless hours, days, nights, resources, planning, organizing, calling, and doing all he can to provide the leadership to bring about the best possible outcome in this election. It is my privilege to introduce to you that man, the chairman of the Gray Republican Committee. Please welcome Peter Brown.
Thank you very much. He's so kind, so very kind. I'm going to make sure this is recording. Let's see. 1 second. The last event we had, I forgot to push that little button there to record it. So I'm not going to do that again. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy that all of you are here. And I'm so happy it's not raining.
Amen.
Somebody's been doing some powerful praying, I think. So I'm very grateful. Well, let's see. I'm going to start my remarks with a question and a dilemma that I think can be resolved. And the question is this: how can good-hearted, loving, decent people even consider the idea that we should stop open borders? In the first few words of John 3:16 state, "For God so loved the world." I imagine God looking down at the world. I don't think he looks at borders. I don't think he looks at race or nationality or anything except the light of love living inside the soul of each human being, however deeply buried it might be. And I don't think God cares about anything except that. So with that kind of view of the world, how can we think about borders? When I was 25, I happened to be at the border of Mexico one evening, and I stuck my fingers through the chain link fence and waved my fingers in the air of Mexico, and I wanted to rip the border fence down, because to me at that moment it was separating God's children. That is perhaps what you might call a transcendent religious view of humanity, the way that God might think. And it's a wonderful view, but it's also, I think, created a dilemma for good people. A dilemma that has been, in terms of borders, a dilemma that has been hijacked, I believe, by the Marxist left and used as a weapon against America. I'm not speaking of liberals when I talk about the Marxist left. I'm not speaking of good-hearted Democrats. I'm speaking about the Marxists that were fed by the Jacobins in the French Revolution. I'm speaking about the Marxists that were nurtured by Marx and Lenin, the leftists and Marxists that didn't have any problem with the blood of the guillotine or the murders of 150 million innocent people in the 20th century. Those Marxists. Now, God even loves those Marxists, and they have souls and beauty in their souls too. But we do have to watch out for actions that are harmful to others. Those Marxists are alive and well in America and in the West. They're traipsing the halls of academia, of media, of Hollywood, of big tech, of corporate boardrooms, of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And in my opinion, the Marxist left has significant influence at every level of the Democratic Party, from the local level to the national. That does not mean that all Democrats are leftists or Marxists. I know a number of Democrats that are wonderful, loving people of conscience. In my opinion, many of them are caught up with that dilemma that I spoke about. They want to love people. They want to love people all over the world. But they are influenced by the inimical propaganda and falsehoods, in my opinion, of the left. The left is clever. It uses words like love as punctuation between calls to action, which frequently can be labeled as hateful. They talk about tearing down hate as they tear down buildings. It doesn't jibe. Their propaganda has allowed them over the last few decades to, quite frankly, own the narrative in the cultural and political spheres. Conservatives are often on the defensive. They're on the run. Leftists will accuse them of being unkind or ungenerous or selfish or bigoted or hateful or, like all of us, a basket of deplorables. And, they're clever that way. And many conservatives have been caught off guard and don't push back against the accusations of the left, and sometimes even cave in to their demands and apologize when they should not apologize for what they did. It's time for liberals, good-hearted liberals and conservatives, to reclaim the narrative, to take the words like love and compassion and kindness and throw them back at the left and say, wait, if you believe in those things, you need to act like that. So let's see you do that. An example of the leftist propaganda and use of that kind of words of influence and confusion can be found on Joe Biden's webpage about immigration, where it states, "It is a moral failing and a national shame when a father and his baby daughter drown seeking our shores." That is speaking, of course, of Senor Oscar Martinez and his daughter Valeria, who drowned in the Rio Grande in 2019 as they attempted to cross the Rio Grande into America near Brownsville, Texas. It was a tragic death, and anyone who has a good heart will feel it's a terrible tragedy. There's a photograph of Senor Martinez and his daughter lying face down in the water. It's a horrible thing to have happened. It's a tragedy, but it was an unnecessary tragedy, and it was not, as Joe Biden states on his webpage, the fault of anyone in America or the fault of America itself. It was an unnecessary tragedy because Senor Martinez should not have tried to enter illegally across the river with his 2-year-old daughter in tow. He should have gone through regular means, the legal means, knocked on the door. If he had, they might not have been in America today, but they probably would still be alive. It's not the fault of the U.S. The left uses tragedies like that to push their agenda. So let's look at their agenda about open borders. A lot of people will say that they're not talking about open borders. The Democrats aren't talking about open borders. Somebody emailed me before this meeting, you shouldn't lie and say that the Democrats are talking about open borders. They're not. Well, in 2019, Jesus Garcia, the Democrat representative from Illinois, introduced a bill called the New Way Forward Act. It states many things, but one of the things it does is that it decriminalizes illegal entry. It decriminalizes illegal entry. Now, the left is very fond of Orwellian newspeak, and it may deny that they're proposing open borders, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that when you decriminalize illegal entry, you've opened the border. And that's common sense. The left speaks of the peoples of the world with compassion. They tell us that we should love everyone in South America, Central America, Mexico. Let them come in. How can you deplorables be so cold-hearted? Well, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine if, over the last 2 or 3 decades, most of those illegal aliens that had entered America, after entering America, had declared their support for conservative and Republican values, and most recently for Donald Trump. What would the Democrats be saying about borders today? They would not want open borders. They would be building a wall that was 500 feet high, covered with broken glass and barbed wire and electrified fencing and German Shepherd dogs patrolling the wall, to do anything to keep those horrible, conservative, Republican, illegal aliens out of this country. Do you agree?
True.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? This is a thought experiment. It can't be proven unless it happened, but it's common sense. Let's do another thought experiment. What if most of those illegal aliens had gone through the door correctly and had applied for entry, had studied English, studied American history, the U.S. Constitution, had passed their citizenship test, had learned the Pledge of Allegiance, had said, we want to be proud Americans, we love America, we love the principles of liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum, out of many one. We're here, we're Americans. Would most conservatives be upset with the fact that they entered America, that maybe they weren't white, they're from Mexico? Would anybody care? No. Americans almost universally now don't really care what color you are, what race you are, what language you speak. What matters is what you think, what you feel, what you believe. So for conservatives, they would have been welcome to come legally, assuming that the amount was appropriate. This program tonight is not an anti-immigration program. It is not. We are pro-regular immigration. America was built by immigration. Immigration helped make America great. This program is about open borders, which is an entirely different thing. Let's have another thought experiment. Imagine on November 3rd if Joe Biden wins the presidency with a vice president in tow who's most likely more radical than he and will take over as soon as he's declared unfit for office, which would probably be in about a week. And then imagine that the House and the Senate were also dominated by Democrats, and the only place Republicans could go in the U.S. Capitol would be the broom closet. There would be nothing for anybody to do except listen to what the Democrats wanted to do. What would that do to our country after November 3rd? What would happen to the borders? This is a prediction, and I heard a number of times from somebody in D.C. that if you try to make predictions with your crystal ball, you will end up eating crunched glass. Well, I'm going to make a prediction anyway. I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, I'd say this was a safe bet. As soon as the November election finished and the inauguration, etc., the border wall, the so-called evil Trump border wall, would be plowed down to bits. The border agents would be stood down. Our dear Robert McCardle here, who will speak to us next from the Border Patrol, would be out of a job. You'd have to find something else to do with your life, because border agents would be told, you don't have to worry about those undocumented immigrants coming over the border. We want them, they're fine. The borders would essentially disappear, and illegals would pour over the border by the millions, day after day, week after week, month after month. They would be given driver's licenses, health care, jobs, and legal status. Many of them would be good-hearted people like Senor Martinez and his daughter Valeria. Unfortunately, many of them would be black-hearted individuals like cartel members who are in the terrible habit of dismembering their victims, or Islamic jihadists, or Chinese communists, or sex traffickers, and I'm sure that Mr. Mercado could tell us about that. Sex traffickers are already extremely active across our borders now, and we're trying to stop them. Imagine if we weren't trying to stop them. It would be unreasonable to think that those millions of illegals pouring across the border would stop and say, as soon as they get here, I think we should study English and study U.S. history and the Constitution and pass the citizenship test and become Republicans and conservatives, right? Because that's what we should do. No, it's unreasonable to think that. Instead, they would gratefully accept Democratic money, largesse, and they would become loyal Democratic voters, probably for life. With that influx of new voters, the power base of the Democratic Party would be secured for decades. What would happen after that? Well, in my opinion, shortly after that, we would see the Green New Deal, we would see socialism, we would see economic collapse, and we would see tyranny rearing its ugly head even more than we see it now. And even in the coronavirus pandemic, we have seen tyranny in states run by Democratic governors. Oh yes, we live in one. And, you know, rights are being chipped away, free speech is being chipped away, people are resigning from jobs because of the loss of free speech. Well, with this new prediction, tyranny would be in full force. America would resemble Venezuela, and in that weakened state, in my opinion, the Chinese Communist military would take a very close look at America and say, well, it looks like we've got a nice plum for the picking. And would the American military be strong enough to resist them? Quite possibly not. At the same time, Islamic Sharia law would start to spread from their enclaves across America. And because Marxism and Orthodox Islam are both totalitarian, I think there would be internecine fighting all across America, and America would be a terrible place to live. It would, however, solve the problem of illegal immigration, because no one would want to come here anymore. Does anybody go to Venezuela or Iran right now? No, but many people would want to leave America, but where could they go? There wouldn't be anywhere to go. If this is a very grim picture, well, it's true. It's a very grim picture. It's a prediction. Will it happen if Biden wins and the House and Senate are lost? Who knows? But I would bet that it would. So to leave that grim prediction for a moment, let's go back to the verse, for God so loved the world. What does that mean for America, for freedom, for borders? Leftist activists have been indoctrinating America's youth for decades that America is an irredeemably evil, racist country, that there's nothing good that America's ever done, that it will do or can do, and it needs to be torn down and burned down to the ground. We see that now with the riots, with the Black Lives Matter activists, by the way, whose founders stated on video that they were trained Marxists. We see it with the Antifa members. The indoctrination that they've been giving millennials is so horrific and such a brutal lie. Have you heard of the 1619 Project sponsored by the New York Times? Basically stating that America is just awful, irredeemable. That is a lie, and it can be proven by anyone with a modicum of knowledge of history and objectiveness toward history, not just American history, but global history. In 1630, when John Winthrop said that the new Massachusetts Bay Colony could become a city upon a hill, he was prophetic, and that image of America has been proven for almost 400 years. In 10 more years, it will be 400 years since he said that. America has been a beacon of hope for millions and millions and millions of people all around the world who came here looking for a better life. Even Democratic presidents John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama used that phrase, city upon a hill, to describe America. The central truth of America is that it's been a beacon of hope and goodness for the world. People come here because the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the free enterprise system, the system of checks and balances has created a country where you can live in freedom and you can prosper. The ethics and original Christian beliefs of America have created a country that was so moral that they were able to sacrifice and overcome their flaws, as they did in the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, to finally grow and become the least racist nation on earth. Black Lives Matter will say it's a systemically racist country, but it's not true. Systemic racism means that it's in the system. If someone who's African American goes to the bank to get a mortgage, they cannot get one because it's in the system. It's not in the system. It's against the law to be like that. Yes, there are a few racists running around. Shame on them. But they're a very small minority. Just imagine for a moment if America had collapsed after the revolution and had not managed to flower and become a country that it has become, and history had changed. What would it have done to history? Did anybody see the television show Man in the High Castle, where the Nazis and the Japanese won World War II and took over the world, basically? Well, if America had not come about, would Hitler's Nazis and the Soviet Union be running the world together with China right now? It's possible. Has America brought light to the world? Yes, it has. To continue to do so, we have to remain healthy as a country. And to remain healthy as a country, there are many elements of health. But in my opinion, one of the biggest elements is the group of commonly shared beliefs that we have in our founding principles and in the U.S. Constitution. We have borders not because we hate people, but because we must maintain the integrity of our country's freedoms and spirit and values. We must maintain the well-being of our national home. We must make sure that the majority of people in our country believe in liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. Those beliefs will fall away if we open our borders to newcomers who don't share those beliefs. Our so-called ship of state will founder under the weight of hostile immigrants who don't share those beliefs. We have to protect our country. It's not selfish to protect the health of one's home or the health of one's country as we seek to continue to love and serve other countries. At the same time, we have to look at the economy of our country. Even if every immigrant that came into our country loved America, how many can we take in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or a decade? 1 billion? Should 7 billion people move here? It's not that we don't want to love them and serve them. America has loved and served the world. We have to make sure that we maintain our economy so it doesn't become like Venezuela. So it's simply a matter of pragmatism combined with unselfishness. America will be able to give blessings to the world, continue to give blessings to the world, if it is healthy, prosperous, and free, as it has been for 300 years. So now we've come to a choice. Should America continue in our history and record of service to the world with love and wisdom and common sense? Or should we allow the left, the hard left, to turn America into a broken, ignorant, totalitarian, and impoverished country that is unable to help anyone? If that happens, no one here or abroad will benefit. It will be a terrible tragedy for America and for the world. And it is for that reason that I pray that all Americans can pray that God can continue to guide us and help us remain as a city upon a hill. Amen. Thank you. Amen? Amen. So, as Pastor Vale said, after each of our talks, we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A, and let's see. It's almost 7 o'clock, so if there are any questions, if there are not, we can just move on to our next speaker. Okay, our next speaker, and we'll have Q&A at the end, so you can save up all your questions. At the end of the 4 speakers, we'll have, of course, myself, and then Robert McCardle, Larry Lockman, and then the chair of the GOP, Demi Kazunas, will be arriving around 7:15 or so. We'll have, after those four speakers speak, we'll have a section of Q&A where all four of us will come up to the podium. You can ask any questions you like. Oh, I dropped it. I dropped a piece of paper. Let's see. So the next one is a real highlight, in my opinion. We've been working hard since May of last year to get members of the Border Patrol to come to a speech, and it's finally worked out, and I'm very happy. Rob McCardle had to come from Holton, Maine, with his friend and associate Mark Phillips, who drove all the way down here today, right? So fill him with coffee in the breaks. Robert McCardle serves as the current National Border Patrol Council local president, representing Local 2349. Local 2349 represents the Border Patrol agents and support staff of the Holton Border Patrol sector, which encompasses the entire state of Maine. He brings with him over 13 years of Border Patrol experience and an understanding of border security issues. Robert started his career in 2007 in El Cajon, California, and in 2010 he transferred to Holton, Maine. Since 2010, he has been a union representative for the Holton sector, and in 2016 was elected the local president. In 2019, he was appointed to the National Health and Safety Committee as a union official representing the 16,000 plus men and women of the Border Patrol. Please welcome Robert McCardle.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. Like you said, I'm the local president for Local 2349. And before I kind of get into that, I just wanted to point out that I was brought down to kind of speak about some of the actual issues that go on the border, try and give you kind of a bird's eye view of kind of what they deal with on the border. So before I get into that, you might be asking, what exactly is the NBPC? So that is the National Border Patrol Council. And what that is it's a group of men and women that are actually elected to represent the agents. So we have our national council. That's going to be Brandon Judd, and then that's made up of a bunch of vice presidents. And that is those individuals are elected by the actual local, the actual local union. So, for instance, like we go and we'll elect them, and then they speak for us nationally, and then the local speaks for the agents in that particular sector they work. For me, that'd be Maine. As he had said, we're the exclusive representation of approximately 18,000 Border Patrol agents and support staff. So we represent the agents on the line, and then as well as the mission support staffs like the secretary, the mechanics, that kind of stuff. Membership is not mandatory, but we boast a 90% membership rate. So if you think about that, since we are a labor union, that's 90% of the members sign up and have us represent them because they appreciate what we're doing for them. And one of the big things that we do is we actually come to events and we'll speak to them. We'll speak to the public because a regular agent can't come and do that. So we'll come and speak for them on their behalf. And just we'll speak to anybody, Republican, Democrat, anybody who wants to hear what's going on. We don't pick political sides, so to speak. We'll speak to anyone who wants to hear the truth. So, like you said, I'm the president of Local 2349, representing the agents out of Maine, and we deal with the local issues from disciplinary up to going and speaking with different representatives or groups. Next, not to insult anybody's intelligence, I'm going to kind of break down what the actual Border Patrol is, because the media seems to mess that up at every turn. They call us every name under the sun. They get our name Border Control, Border Guards. They call us other names I probably can't even repeat right now, but some of that's intentional. So first we have DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, and that is the parent organization. So under that you'll have like TSA, Coast Guard, and then CBP. So what is CBP? That's Customs and Border Protection, and this is kind of where it gets kind of foggy and people kind of mess it up. So Customs and Border Protection actually has 3 enforcement wings, so to speak. that fall under them, and that is Air Marine. So Air Marine are like the helicopter pilots, the boat pilots, the boat vessel commanders, and they go and they'll patrol like the ocean, or they'll fly the helicopters for us and be our eyes and ears. Next you have OFO, and that's the ladies and gentlemen in the blue uniforms. So if you come through a port, like a seaport, airport, like a land port, you'll present yourself for inspection there, and they will either accept you or reject you if your status is legal. And then you have the Border Patrol. So what the Border Patrol is we patrol in between those land ports. So anything that's outside of the land ports that OFO is not working, then the Border Patrol comes and we make sure that people aren't coming in illegally, and that they're in the green uniforms. So next I'll talk about the three realities that actually are hard truths about the border. The first one is cross-border crime. Everybody's pretty much familiar with. So you have the cartels, and they are bringing across drugs, and they're bringing up across aliens illegally. They're pretty self-explanatory. The second reality, though, that's not talked about a whole lot, is the high traffic areas are also high crime areas. And how so? So one of those is bandits. So anytime there's people coming across and they're carrying drugs, or even the aliens that are crossing, they have some valuables with them, money or whatever, there's going to be other group of people that want to rip them off and try and get the low-hanging fruit, be it the drugs, the money that they have. So they're usually not good people. They're going to be pretty violent, and they're going to take what they can. And you have the shootings, so that'll be bandits. The drug cartels also are going to protect their cargo. So if they return back to the cartels with no drugs, usually they're going to end up dead. So they're going to protect that. In their mind, they're going to end up dead if they go back. So they're going to fight to the death, or at least fight hard to try and protect their cargo, being the drugs. Assault on agents. So that's been an ongoing problem. Car thefts, trespass, that sort of stuff. So when people cross illegally, they're desperate to try and get away. They don't want to be apprehended. So if your property is right on the border, people will run through your back of your yard or use your land to cross. The border is, despite what the media might say, the border is mostly private property. So people own ranches or property on the border. So you have people coming and crossing right on your property, hiding in your barn, stealing your things. So that's another high crime, part of the high crime area. And then the third reality, and this is kind of politically charged right now, but it probably shouldn't be, because this has been kind of the truth for as long as I've been in, and even longer. But the third reality is that a wall system works. I'll define what an actual wall system here is in a minute, but essentially I'll talk about the history of what the actual wall is. So prior to any type of wall, we had like barbed wire or nothing at all, just border monuments. And unless somebody would point out, agents starting out, like that piece of barbed wire right there is the wall, or the fence, so to speak. Nobody knows where that's at. So then they started erecting landing mat fences, and what that was is essentially, if you picture, if you will, a big corrugated piece of metal, and probably 15 feet wide, about 8 feet tall. And those were actually landing mats from the Vietnam era, where they would put them down and the helicopters would land on them. So we started erecting them to try and at least strategically give us a little bit of reactionary gap, mainly in the towns and stuff where people could kind of just jump back and forth across the line. Then fast forward to about 10 years ago, they started erecting bollard fences, which what that is, it's like big cast iron pieces of pipe stuck in the ground, and then they fill them with concrete. And there's a gap. There's probably 6-inch gap in between it, so you could actually see through it, whereas the landing mat, you couldn't see through it. So if people ran up to the fence, you had no idea to know, if they were there on the fence or not. And what would happen is they run up, half a mile or somewhere, and you lose track of them because you can't see where they're at. So, and then they'll cross on, where you're not expecting them. So the bollard kind of solved that. The issue that then became with the bollard fence was, if you were fairly agile, and it'd be more people than you realize that they're agile. That was one thing I had learned pretty quick, that people jump over that landing mat fence easy, or the bollards, they could actually grab in between those spaces and shimmy right to the top, climb over and then slide all the way down. So now what they have is this improved wall, which took some of the good things with the bollard, like to being able to see through it, and then they added they did a bunch of different testing, different types of walls, and they put a flat section at the top, which made it even harder to scale. So even if you could shimmy to the top, there's no way to get over it. It's a lot harder. You're going to need, a lot of equipment to be able to try to cross over the fence. So earlier I said the wall system. So I'll kind of explain what exactly the wall system is. So just having that wall is handy, but there's some other things that go with it. So when they say the wall system, you have that improved wall, but you also have actual improved border roads. So if you can't actually get down to that border and patrol it, it's kind of pointless, because we need to be able to drive the vehicles back and forth, and one of the main functions of a border patrol agent is to sign cut, and it's fancy speak for look for footprints. So when somebody crosses over the border, agents will go and they drive back and forth endlessly looking for footprints across. So that border road, when they grade that and they make it all weather and be able to go down and check and look for the footprints, then the agent can actually get out and follow the footprints until they find the aliens. So then they also have the access roads. So if you can't respond quickly down to the border road to be able to sign cut and be able to follow them, you're going to have to drive sometimes 20 minutes, half an hour to get down to these access roads, to turn and drive 20 minutes back to get behind the aliens, and then now they're an hour ahead of you, and sometimes it's very quick pace. You have to be able to get behind them quickly and get them before they're going to load in a vehicle or abscond. So you might wonder, how does the wall actually work? How's that going to, we talk about the wall all the time. Nobody actually talks about why is it better. So the first thing I said it was harder to scale. Obviously, if they can't get over it as easy or at all, that's a win. The next thing is actually a reactionary gap. So when the agents spot the people coming over on the fence, it's going to take them a lot longer. They can't just jump over the line and run away. And so it gives us that reactionary gap and buys us time to be able to get down there. Same, and it works both ways. So if people are absconding back, a lot of times they'll come in to test you to see if they can get away, or they'll come quite a ways in, but they'll run back, and it's almost Mexico as home base, because we can't obviously arrest anybody in Mexico. So if we have that fence there to give us that reactionary gap, we can actually go and get them before they abscond, and then just sit and wait and try and come back half an hour later. The other one that's kind of like might throw you, people don't think about it, so it might throw you for a loop, is it's an actual clear indication of the border. And by that I mean, as I said with that barbed wire earlier, with nothing at all, agents can't arrest people in a foreign country. So we have to know exactly where they're at in order to be able to enforce the law. So part of that is the border fence. I mean, that's a clear indication of where the border is. The other thing is, there's an example when I was down in Yuma probably about 2 years ago. Was talking to an agent prior to any wall they had erected years ago. There's a canal there. It's a man-made canal, and it carries water. It's concrete, but there's no way to really get across it without swimming, and it's fairly dangerous. They have very far spaced out areas. They have little bridges that you can drive over, but it's so hard to get across it. It takes so long. Agents were only patrolling on the north side of that canal, because obviously they're not going to swim across it, because it puts their life in danger. So what ended up happening was, because nobody's really at that time was really patrolling south of that canal, people started building houses. Like Mexican citizens started building houses on the U.S. side, and until they actually erected the wall, that all kind of stopped. So that clear indication of a border, of where the actual border is pretty important for us to be able to know where it's at and claim our territory. And then the other one is, it keeps agents safe. So with no border at all, with no border wall at all, or even that landing mat fence, agents would get assaulted right on the line, because the closer you got to the border, the more people kind of got emboldened, because if they could assault you or throw rocks at you, all they have to do is jump across the border and they're safe. So you'd be amazed how many people can just run and jump up that corrugated fence, which is, like I said, it was corrugated. You could put your feet on it and kind of run right up the side, grabbing on. And with that low fence, they're able to throw rocks at you, which we call it getting rocked. Like if you're driving a vehicle where agents get hit with those rocks, and you have to picture it's not just small little pebbles or small rocks. I mean, sometimes we're talking half chunks of concrete, and that coming across and coming raining down that just over that 7-8 foot fence, that could kill you. So that tall border fence actually keeps the agents safer. So now I'll kind of pivot to our sector specifically, Holton sector. So we're not really immune from the activity that's going on either. With all the borders are kind of tied together. Even though people forget about the northern border, the stuff on the southern border still impacts the northern border. And I'll talk about some of the historic stuff, and then we'll get into how that kind of ties in a little bit here in a minute. So a couple of high-profile cases that were from our sector. In 2014, Jean-Leonard Teganya was arrested in the Holton area. He was a Rwandan citizen and was facing removal from Canada. And he was wanted in Rwanda for war crimes. If you remember that movie, Hotel Rwanda, I believe it was called, with Don Cheadle, it's kind of that same era where there was like all the genocide going on. The Hutus were killing the Tutsis. He was actually a Hutu, and in 1994, the government accused him of genocide of over 200 Tutsis taking part in genocide at a hospital where he was present. So he came. Essentially, Canada was going to remove him. They weren't going to process his asylum claim. They're going to send him back to Rwanda, where he was facing the death penalty for genocide. So he came here illegally, crossed, and then applied for asylum. During the course, he lied about his asylum claim, and then he just, as of last year, he just finally was sentenced to 8 years for lying on that asylum claim. So he's in federal prison right now. Presumably, afterwards he'll probably be deported, but I mean, I can't tell you for sure. Then in 2015, John Calvin, he's the grandson of the Hamas founder. He was apprehended also again near Holton. He claimed that he was gay, and the reason I say that's why he was fleeing. He was a Palestinian. He was fleeing because he said he was gay. Canada actually refused his claim, and by that, like he said that they would put him to death where he was from. So Canada actually either didn't believe him or didn't want him to stay, but they refused his asylum claim, and again he crossed in the United States. He was actually given asylum, but I mean, he still crossed illegal, and we still have a job to be able to know who's coming into the country. So then, kind of what happened a couple years ago. So Prime Minister Trudeau decided to approve the visa waiver program, and what that meant for Mexican nationals that came into Canada was they no longer needed a visa. So that visa kind of ensures they have to go through a process to make sure that the people are probably going to leave. They have the desire to want to maybe just visit but then go back home. Without that visa program, anybody from Mexico could just step on an airplane, pay the $300 or whatever, and then show up in Canada. And then now they've avoided the southern border, which is usually pretty dangerous. There's a lot more Border Patrol resources down there, so it's harder. They might have to cross a 100-mile desert in the heat. So it's easier to smuggle yourself across if you show up in Canada and then just walk across the border, which is exactly what was going on. The aliens realized it was a lot cheaper and a lot safer to just get on that airplane and walk across themselves. So what ended up happening, though, is those smuggling organizations recognized a opportunity. So they started then moving in, and what that means for us, just right now in our sector, we're up over 400% apprehension-wise. So they've moved in, and in the last year or so in the Holton sector, they've kind of moved in, and they're starting to actually smuggle people like with actual organized criminal activity. So they'll put 5 or 6 of them in a vehicle. We've had a few events now where they'll smuggle them in, whereas before it was maybe just 1 or 2 here or there. So the southern border is impacting the northern border now because it's becoming so closed down and so hard to cross. They're actually starting to move into the northern border where they think it's easier to cross. So kind of tight on time, but I'll just say in closing, criminal organizations are not constrained or restricted by the borders. Without tough enforcement, they're going to find a way to make money moving people or selling narcotics. And then what happens is when they're moving and selling that, they're not going to just stop at crossing the border. They're going to move their product from point A to point B, which might be New Jersey or Kansas or whatever. And essentially then every state still has the same problems that border states have. So New Jersey, even though not anywhere near the border, it's having the border state problems. So all that residual crime that was normally constrained to the border is now in your backyard wherever you live in the country. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, Q&A. We have a cordless mic so that our live... Yeah, one sec. Natalie, you have the mic? We're going to use a cordless microphone for Q&A because we're live streaming this on the internet, so when you get home you can watch the whole thing again if you like. But without the mic, the questions can't get picked up. So...
Yeah, I got a question regarding COVID-19.
Sure.
That, there's a problem with people coming across and possibly having it. I've also read that there have been a number of Border Patrol agents that have died from that disease. Are you familiar with that, or could you kind of comment on that whole?
There has been several that we're aware of that have passed. I mean, I can't tell you about medical history or whatever else, but they've attributed that COVID-19 to a few deaths, unfortunately, that were agents.
How many agents do you have patrolling in Maine, and do you do 100% of the border? Because there's a lot of paper company land where there aren't any people living, and do you actually patrol those areas too?
The way that Maine is set up, we actually can patrol the majority of it because we claim the coastal areas as well. So we can actually patrol the majority of it. Mainly we stick to the land parts, but the coastal areas we do occasionally get down there and try and patrol. What was the second part of the question again?
How many people do this?
I don't want to give like actual operational numbers, but far less than. I mean, the stuff I'm telling you is all open source. So I mean, we don't want to give out exact numbers because the bad guys will use that against us. But far less than the southern border. You'd be surprised.
Someone have a question over here?
Right here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry.
I just want to say thank you on behalf of so many people who do not feel we can speak nowadays. Thank you so much, and we're trying everything we can think of to support you, but it's complicated. And anything you can mention that might be something we can do individually.
I appreciate that, and actually, with like I said, there's less agents patrolling the northern border and the southern border, particularly if you're in a like an area that's closer to the border. The citizens actually help, believe it or not. They know what's strange. Many of them have lived there longer than the agents have, or been around longer than the agents have been alive. They know what's kind of strange, and when they call it in, we'll check it out. If it's nothing, people go on their way, and if not, they actually foil quite a bit of the things that are happening. So the public does play a big part in securing the border, believe it or not.
Hi, thank you. I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit, please, about the ratio of illegal people coming across the southern border compared to the northern border.
Well, I mean,
Thank you.
it kind of depends on area specific. I mean, it's not any one type of people. I mean, people want to make it kind of a race issue, but I mean, it's anything that's suspicious for us in the northern border. Canadians can come across the northern border just as easily as anybody else, and we catch them all the time. And I can't tell somebody's, citizenship just looking at them. People I mean, people live in Canada the same as they do in the United States right there on the border. You have no idea without going and actually checking them out and asking them questions. The same on the southern border. The racial makeup there is the same as people on either side, like Mexico and say like El Paso. There's El Paso in Mexico, and then there's El Paso in the United States. And people all, they're the same racial makeup sometimes, but they, you can't tell. It's everybody in the whole world wants to come here. So we have to patrol the border, make sure that they're actually coming here legally, and then if something's strange, we go check it out. First question we ask people when you find them out in the woods or wherever, are you a citizen? You know, if they're a citizen and they're here, you know, or they're here legally with like lawfully permanent residents, have a good day. You know, you're not doing anything wrong. If they're not committing any crimes, have a good day. The minute we find out that they're not, then we have to go through the whole process and make sure that they've come here legally.
Hey, yeah, so I was wondering if you had any information about, like, the child trafficking numbers, if you get any of that coming across the northern border, like, kids with, not with the right family, or just child trafficking in general?
The child trafficking was more on the southern border. So what was happening was, if you remember the caravans, for instance, they were giving different treatment to people that had a family unit, so to speak. So what was happening is some of these children were just kind of being passed back and forth, and they weren't even any part of the family. They're just being passed to another person, so to speak, because they would come across, they would claim, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my whoever, and they would use them to try and get quicker access to the United States, because what was happening was the asylum courts were overwhelmed. So we can only hold them for a certain amount of time, and with the family units, what they were doing is that time limit, we couldn't hold them for too long, and then they were just being released because of the children. And unfortunately, these children were just being passed around. You have no idea who they're with, and it's not always good people. I mean, so that's when the media was saying we're separating families, that was what was happening. They'd find out this wasn't your child. You don't have any relation to this person. Can't be with this. We have a duty to keep these children safe. I mean, you know, most border patrol agents actually family have, you know, their fathers, their mothers. So we have a duty to keep these children safe. They started DNA testing, and it was, I couldn't give you the exact numbers, but I had heard something like 40-50% of the children that were coming across had no relation. So that was what we were talking about when they were separated. We weren't splitting up families. If that was a legitimate family, they were actually being released in the United States with a court date to show back up year, 2, 3 years later. What we would then do is we would take that child, if it was proven to not be the child of that family member or of that person that was using them as a decoy, and then reunite them with their family as fast as possible.
I have crossed a lot because I go to Canada a lot, and I've always wondered, do you find that there's more people coming, unauthorized people coming from Canada to America, or what are the numbers? Is there a bigger gap from going through Maine and to Canada? Oh.
Are they going to Canada, or are they coming to the United States? Is that what you're asking? It's kind of hit or miss. Originally, I'd say, like I said, that probably for the last 10 years, I could say, the majority of them were coming into the United States. But then, probably 3 years ago, we had a lot of people that were actually coming into New York, say, and then they were false claiming what their actual intentions were to come here. They were just going to come here to visit. Well, their idea was to actually go into Canada, where they were accepting different people, and they would go into different communities. So they were already coming here with the intent to go over there. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do other than try and get them to say that they intentionally came and lied to somebody, like at the port, for instance, with the intention of going to Canada. So it does go both ways, surprisingly.
We'll have time for more questions after. because at the end.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure to have you here. So, our next speaker is in a moment, but first I want to mention that over here on our table area, we have some information, of course, about the Gray Republican Committee. And by the way, if you probably saw the flyer that brought you here, and there are many co-sponsors for Republican committees in towns. We recommend that if you haven't already, get in touch with your local town committee. But we also have a Dr. Jay Allen, who's running for Congress in Congressional District 1. So at the end of the event, please go see him. Tell him you're going to vote for him and get all your neighbors to vote for him, and then he'll be happy. We also have Mr. Burnell Bailey standing there with the red hat, who is in charge of Mainers for Responsible Immigration. So he has some information. Is there someone else next to you, Burnell, that's a different? No? Okay. So, and of course there are refreshments inside. Was that mentioned? I hope it was. So our next speaker is Representative Larry Lockman. Larry Lockman and his bride Debbie celebrated their 48th wedding anniversary earlier this month. They have been blessed with 4 children and 6 grandchildren. I'm so jealous, I don't have any yet. Larry is a native of California, born in Pasadena. 50 years ago this year, he moved from Los Angeles to Bangor, a move which he says looks better with every passing year. Larry had the good sense to marry a native Mainer several years after arriving here. Larry graduated from Philmont Christian Academy in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania in 1967, and went on to study liberal arts at Covenant College in Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, and Pasadena City College in Pasadena, California, before moving to Maine. After their wedding in 1972, Larry and Debbie moved from Bangor to Maxfield in northern Penobscot County. For the next 18 years, Larry was an hourly production line employee at Diamond International Corporation's Pasadumkeag? Pasadumkeag? Almost. Oh well. Stud Mill, where he served as a union organizer and a shop steward for the United Paperworkers International Union. He first ran for a seat in the Maine House of Representatives in 1986 and lost decisively to the incumbent Democrat Mike Michaud of East Millinocket. In 1992, Lockman left the mill and went to work as a field sales representative for NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, a small business lobbying organization with offices in all 50 state capitals. He qualified numerous times for NFIB's prestigious President's Club. That means you'll be President of the United States sometime, right? And for the annual Washington, D.C. Summit Award. See how I did that? In 2012, after retiring from NFIB, Larry ran for an open seat in the Maine House of Representatives and was elected by a margin of 106 votes, such a landslide, earning the nickname Landslide Larry. He has been re-elected by much wider margins in 2014, 2016, and 2018. 5 years ago, Lockman co-founded Maine First Project, a 501c4 nonprofit committed to recruiting and training a grassroots army of activists to transform the political landscape in Maine. And Heather Siraki works with him on that. Heather's here too, right? So there she is. The group engages in confrontational politics, taking its cue from author David Horowitz, the red diaper baby who counsels conservatives to fight fire with fire and take no prisoners. Who here has heard of David Horowitz? All right. If you haven't, go to frontpagemag.com. He's a former communist who writes prolifically, and he's great. This year, Rep. Lockman challenged the entrenched Republican incumbent in State Senate District 8 in the July 14th primary. Senate District 8 stretches up the east side of the Penobscot River from Castine to Lincoln. Unofficial returns have him trailing by 59 votes out of 4,107 cast. The recount will be conducted tomorrow afternoon in Augusta. Please welcome Larry Lockman.
Thank you, Peter, and good evening, everyone. Let me get right to the point with a simple summary statement of my views on immigration and citizenship, and with my apologies to Patrick J. Buchanan for paraphrasing and perhaps plagiarizing his words. Here it is. America is our home. And by ours, I mean we the people, citizens of the United States. America is our home. We get to decide who we adopt. We get to decide who comes here and how long they stay. Non-citizens who are legally present are our guests, and they should behave like guests. They should be on their best behavior. One strike, you're out. Now, you probably won't be surprised to learn that leftist progressive legislators in Augusta and Washington disagree with that view. I would summarize their policy preferences this way. All immigration is good, more immigration is better, and third world immigration is best. So let's review the recent history of immigration policy in Maine, and let's talk about how we got to where we are today, both with regard to legal and illegal immigration. In 2004, Governor John Baldacci issued an executive order that made the entire state of Maine a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. State employees were not allowed to ask about anybody's immigration status, whether it was the state police making an arrest of a criminal suspect or a Health and Human Services caseworker processing an application for welfare benefits. In effect, Maine was telling the world that although we are a relatively poor state, Maine has very generous welfare programs, and we don't care if you're an illegal immigrant. Come to Maine and sign up. I have to say I was disappointed that the Republican candidate who ran against Baldacci in 2006, Chandler Woodcock, never once raised this issue in his campaign. In fact, I recall watching a televised debate in which each candidate was invited to ask his opponent any question they wanted to ask. I thought, what a great opportunity for Woodcock to draw a sharp contrast with Baldacci. But alas, Woodcock asked some utterly forgettable question about civility in politics. Not so with Paul LePage. He was an in-studio guest on WVOM Talk Radio 10 years ago this month when he was the GOP nominee for governor, and he was taking questions from listeners. I managed to get through, and I asked him this question. Mayor LePage, if you are elected governor, will you rescind the Baldacci executive order that made Maine a sanctuary state for illegal aliens? He responded with one word, yes. And then George Hale and Rick Tyler both had to jump in because they hate dead air on the radio, and they were not accustomed to a politician giving a one-word declarative statement and not bloviating. So fast forward to Inauguration Day in January of 2011. It was the first inauguration of a governor I had ever attended. Governor LePage assured us that as soon as he finished his speech, he was headed to the State House to get to work. And when I picked up the Bangor Daily News the next morning, and that's a bad habit I've since broken, I can assure you, I was pleased to read that one of his first acts was to fulfill that campaign promise. Governor LePage rescinded that order on his first day in office, putting an end to Maine's open borders policy. And for that, the people of Maine owe Paul LePage a debt of gratitude. LePage turned off one of the magnets that was drawing illegals to Maine. But there was no way to undo all of the damage that Baldacci's executive order had inflicted on the state. And LePage's action left Portland's sanctuary city ordinance in place. That city ordinance forbids police and city employees from inquiring into anyone's immigration status. The ordinance was enacted in 2003, and city leaders boasted that they were following the lead of San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York City, Miami, and Denver. Portland officials admitted at the time that they had received no formal complaints that police or other city workers had ever asked anybody about their immigration status. So for me, it's hard to understand why politicians in Portland would want to handcuff their own police department. especially just 2 years after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And make no mistake, my friends, these policies and practices have life and death consequences for Maine people. 49-year-old Freddie Okoa of Portland was beaten to death in his Cumberland Avenue apartment on the evening of August 9th, 2015. Court documents revealed that 3 assailants beat and kicked him for hours and bashed Okoa in the head with furniture. Okoa had 22 rib fractures from the savage attack, cuts and bruises all over his head and torso, and a lacerated liver when his assailants left him to die on the living room floor of his apartment. Police found a blood-splattered Bible next to his head on the floor. His body was not discovered until 2 days later, after his mother contacted building management to let them know she was not able to reach her son. On August 13th, 4 days after the savage murder, 3 Portland residents aged 23, 31, and 36 were arrested and charged with murder. With bail set at $500,000 for each man, they were jailed awaiting trial or a plea. After the initial news reports of the court appearance and details of the crime, a media blackout began. It would be 10 months before one of the defendants pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and during that time, Maine's news media outlets didn't have a single report about the personal backgrounds of the accused killers. To this day, nearly 5 years later, we have learned next to nothing about the killers, except their names, how old they are, and the fact that they each had multiple prior criminal convictions. Think about that for a minute. We all know how the media generally handles cases like this. Reporters contact family members of the defendants, they talk to neighbors, co-workers, classmates, or whoever else they can find to shed some light on just who the accused killers are. You know, who is this guy? What makes him tick? None of that happened in the case of Freddie Okoa's murderers. Maine's fake news industry was doing what it does best, concealing the truth and protecting corrupt, incompetent politicians. Would anyone in this audience be shocked to learn that none of Okoa's killers is a United States citizen? Here's another fact I discovered without too much digging. The 31-year-old killer had 33 prior criminal convictions. What I have discovered since then is that the 3 killers had 68 arrests between them prior to the murder of Freddie Okoa. I have the complete file here. It's 82 pages long. And I want to read you just a few excerpts from the rap sheet of one of the convicted killers from Somalia. His rap sheet began in 2005, 10 years before Okoa's murder. Class D assault, violating conditions of release, criminal threatening, criminal trespass, theft by unauthorized taking, domestic violence assault, disorderly conduct, violating conditions of release, again, assault, disorderly conduct, drinking in public, and then 2 years later, murder. Here's the bottom line for me, ladies and gentlemen. These guys should have been deported long before they had a chance to beat Freddie Okoa to death.
That's right.
If you're not a U.S. citizen, you're our guest here. You better be on your best behavior. One strike, you're out. These guys should have been deported after their first brush with the law. And if the city of Portland had been sharing information with federal immigration authorities, these guys would have been deported or held in federal custody, and Freddie Okoa would be alive today. And Okoa isn't the only Mainer who's paid with his life so that Portland's politicians can signal their virtue and feel good about themselves. 3 years ago, the man charged with murder in the 2015 death of a teenager in a Portland recording studio pleaded guilty to the murder charge. A judge sentenced Gang Deng Majak to 30 years in prison for the death of Scarborough teen Trey Arsenal. Majak, who also goes by the nickname Bang Bang, shot Arsenal multiple times in a crowded recording studio in Portland's Old Port on May 26, 2015. Investigators say Arsenault was an innocent victim just listening to a friend sing when he got caught in the middle of the shooting. Majok is not a U.S. citizen. He came to the United States from the Sudan in 2002. He also has a lengthy rap sheet, including drug dealing. The victim's mother, Nancy Laxon, says she believes Majok should have been deported after committing other crimes. Here's what she said. "I'm a nurse. I help everybody. And I think when you do something wrong, you don't have the right to be here. It's not fair. If he had been deported a long time ago, Trey would still be here. But we can't take back time, so hopefully we can make laws that will help other people," close quote. Once again, this is a case of a career criminal, non-citizen with a long rap sheet. But because the politicians in Portland handcuffed and muzzled their own police department, federal immigration authorities were never notified. Trey Arsenault would be alive today were it not for Portland's Harboring Haven Ordinance. So I was pleased to sponsor a bill introduced by Governor LePage the year following these brutal murders, 2016. The proposed legislation would have cut off all state funding to any municipality in the state that refuses to share information about criminal suspects with federal immigration authorities. Very straightforward piece of legislation. Heather, I don't know if you remember, I think it was only a half page. Very simple and to the point. When it came to the floor of the House for referral to a committee for a public hearing, Democrat Majority Leader Jeff McCabe of Skowhegan invoked a seldom used parliamentary maneuver. He moved to table the bill unassigned, effectively killing it without a public hearing or any debate. Assistant Majority Leader Sarah Gideon called the bill, you ready for this? A blatantly racist Trump-like maneuver. She falsely claimed that it would allow police to pull people over based on the color of their skin. Now think about what Gideon said. She believes that Portland police officers would be targeting racial minorities for harassment and arrest were it not for the city ordinance. What a vile insult to Maine's law enforcement officers to suggest that they're on the lookout for non-white drivers to pull over for no good reason. Gideon believes the police are inherently racist and they need to be handcuffed and blindfolded by politicians. In any case, the governor's bill died on adjournment in June of 2016 without a public hearing. Every single Democrat in the Maine House of Representatives voted to kill the bill without debate and without a public hearing. Every single Democrat. But Jeff McCabe did pay a price for what he did. In November 2016, McCabe's name was on the ballot for a state Senate seat. Volunteers for Maine First Project blanketed the district with mail and flyers exposing McCabe's role in protecting violent criminal aliens from deportation. Our donors enabled us to send mail to 7,000 households in the district, accusing McCabe of voting in favor of welfare benefits for ISIS terrorists, such as the refugee who settled in Sarah Gideon's district before returning to the battlefield in the Middle East. McCabe lost the race and publicly blamed Maine First Project for his defeat. Actually, he should be thanking us, since he ended up landing a cushy job as an SEIU lobbyist at the State House. So last year, Democrats in the legislature proposed a bill to provide cash welfare benefits to non-citizens, including so-called asylum seekers who illegally entered the country last summer. After wading across the Rio Grande, between ports of entry, and immediately surrendering to U.S. Border Patrol agents, hundreds of illegal aliens from the Congo and Angola boarded buses bound for Portland, Maine in June of last year, with no medical screening whatsoever prior to their arrival at the Portland Expo. Think about that in regard, I mean, people from Massachusetts aren't welcome here anymore because there's some kind of a public health threat. The proposed legislation allocated $14 million worth of welfare benefits for the border crashers at a time when elderly, low-income Mainers were being evicted from chronically underfunded nursing homes. As far back as December of 2018, Portland city officials had been begging their state legislators to bail Portland out. The city's homeless shelters, and again, this is December of 2018, their homeless shelters were already overrun with border crashers. The Portland Press-Herald reported that 90% of the people staying at the homeless shelters in Portland were non-citizens, and that the city budget was busted. Portland needed a bailout and needed it bad. City Councilor Kimberly Cook told the Press-Herald that with Maine being one of the whitest states in the nation, she supported the latest surge of immigration as a way to solve Maine's demographic challenges. Once again, here is a Democrat politician in Portland explicitly engaging in racial profiling to solve what she perceives as a problem. Maine is just too white. Make no mistake, the left's campaign to transform Maine's demographic profile is rooted in the toxic identity politics ideology that is the heart and soul of the progressive movement. Leftist ideologues believe the world consists of two groups, the oppressed and the oppressors. White folks are the oppressors, people of color are the oppressed. And as the least racially diverse state in the nation, Maine is by definition a bastion of white privilege. The progressives' remedy for Maine's shameful whiteness is more immigration from poverty-stricken third world nations, coupled with government programs to assist the influx of newcomers. We are supposed to pay no attention to what has become of the nations of Western Europe that chose unbridled immigration as the solution to falling birth rates and a workforce shortage. Let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. Isn't it time for our team to take off the gloves? Amen. As David Horowitz counsels, fight fire with fire and take no prisoners. In the last election cycle, the Democrats put Janet Mills and Jared Golden at the top of the ticket in Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Golden voted in lockstep with his party to kill Governor LePage's Sanctuary Cities bill without debate or a public hearing. Janet Mills testified against the bill in committee. What if the Republican candidates for governor and Congress in 2018 had run 30-second radio and TV ads telling voters that Golden and Mills voted to allow the killings to continue in Portland? Ads featuring photos of the victims. Oh, and did I mention that murder victim Freddie Okoa was black? Why do we continue to play nice with politicians who protect criminals and killers from deportation? I know one thing for sure. We can't afford to lose this battle. Right. Immigration is truly an existential issue. Nothing else matters. Taxes, spending, infrastructure, education, none of that matters if we fail to secure our national borders. You either have a country or you don't. And believe me, our children and grandchildren will curse us in our graves if we let this happen without a fight. Maine First Project stands ready to recruit and mobilize Mainers for the battle ahead, and we ask you to join us. Thank you for your attention this evening. I look forward to your questions.
Are there any questions? Raise your hand.
Hi.
Hi.
I like your name tag, by the way.
I have more.
Oh, good. We also have a Paul LePage, we need you back, Maine is killing us sign at the house.
Mills is killing us, all right.
Yes,
yeah.
Mills is killing us. In any case, I just wanted to let everybody know that this is not just a state thing, too, because all of our senators, even Collins, has an F for immigration. And for whatever reason, they need that immigration. And we need to stop it. And we need to stop it really, really, really bad, because this is getting ridiculous. I will not go into Portland anymore for that reason, because you're taking your life into your hands.
And again, I don't know if anybody's aware, but all the homeless are on the steps of City Hall again, trying to figure out where they're going to go because they've shut down the Preble Street Resource Center and all that. And now, what are we supposed to do again, right? And they just keep feeding into it. And now that we have Mills in office again, she just about cow-toed. Oh, she was so excited. Oh my God, we got all these hundreds of immigrants coming into Portland. Let's see what we can do. My brother was homeless at the time. He was living in a shelter, and he couldn't even get any help from anybody. But yet somehow they found housing for all these people that didn't even belong here. It doesn't work that way. We need to fight.
There were 8,000, I believe, low-income Mainers on the wait list for housing, but somehow the newcomers all got pushed to the front of the line.
Right.
Boss, I don't have a question for you. But I just want to follow up on this lady's comments because this morning I circled back to the town manager in Scarborough and I was asking questions about the low-income subsidized housing that's available in our town. There's a big housing project that was put in place and we were sold as taxpayers in Scarborough that we had a long waiting list of destitute, poor Mainers. There were Scarborough residents that needed housing. And so I asked the question, so this brand new housing project that opened up this summer, last summer, how many Scarborough residents are living there? Because I've been by it and they're not from Scarborough. And they told me that they didn't keep track of that information and they couldn't tell me if they were citizens or non-citizens and where they had come from, but there was not one Scarborough resident in that facility. I can assure you. I've seen who's in there. And one of the town councilors told me off the record that they had taken every single housing unit in that facility was filled with someone from either that had come in. Every single unit in that housing facility that was brand new, just built, was filled with someone from Angola or the Congo. It was yeah. Thank you. So that I would urge everybody to call your town managers if you have subsidized housing in your town or community and just ask the question. Force them to respond back to you and ask them, so are we housing non-citizens here, and is there a wait list for Mainers? And how many people are on that wait list? Because I don't think we're being served. Thank you.
I'm right over here, a little closer to the speaker. Yeah,
This isn't a question, it's just a statement. Thanks for the common sense. It's good to see somebody get up and speak the truth.
Thank you.
Hey, those three guys that killed Freddie, what were their names? Their first and last names. You want to read those out loud and where they're from?
Now, the only one that sticks in my mind was the first one, Muhammad.
come right over here. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your talk. Very informative. And I have a question. Has anyone put together how we should react if Black Lives Matters people show up on our doorstep? What should we do? 1, 2, 3. What can we do? Really? Okay, you can say lock and load, but can I fire the gun in the air? Okay, no one seems to have put together an actual brochure that says do this, do this, do this, do not do that. It would be really nice if we could get some people together, maybe form some sort of committee of people to investigate and put out a brochure like that. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Heather, that's your assignment.
Any other questions?
you very much. Let's give Rep. Lockman a big hand again. I think Demi Kazunis is in the building environs. Yes, our next speaker is Dr. Demi Kazunis of Saco, who was re-elected as the chair of the Maine Republican Party on January 12th, 2019. By the way, she just drove from Scarborough, so thank you very much. Chairman Kazunis is a dentist and a small businesswoman with nearly 30 employees at locations in Scarborough and Skowhegan. Along with her practice, Dr. Kazunis also helped start Bright Smiles, a dental clinic for low-income children in Portland, and is co-founder of Dentists Who Care for Me, or Maine, which same thing, right? Which provides a free day of dental care each year. Dr. Kazunis is the past president of the Maine Dental Association, a nonprofit association of about 650 dentists across Maine. Born in Sanford, Dr. Kazunis received her doctorate in dentistry at Tufts before serving our country in the U.S. Army. Let's welcome Demi Kazunis. Thank you very much.
Hi all. I am glad to be here and outdoors because I've been stuck in the room all day long and I'm loving this. I think most of us will sit back one day and ask ourselves, what happened in 2020? For those of you that can remember the 60s, maybe 2020 will be one of those historically memorable times. I think it will be. It's been a very busy few months, and so I wanted to update you of what's going on with the Maine GOP. So it's been crazy the last few months at the headquarters. Over the past 3 months, we have been fighting tirelessly to collect signatures to get the repeal of ranked choice voting to the November ballot, effectively blocking its use for presidential elections. I know, I've heard it 100 times. Why don't we repeal the whole thing? Why are we doing it just for the president? Well, I have to tell you, there is quite a big difference between repeal and initiatives, and this was a repeal. Despite major setbacks, including obviously a worldwide pandemic, statewide shutdown, and Janet Mills delaying our essential worker permits for the month of May, we were still able to collect 72,000 signatures in a shortened window of 64 days within overbearing restrictions. And the restrictions were we couldn't go door to door. We had to do it all by having little stands, and we called them sign and sign, where you signed and we're giving a Trump sign. We gave away 25,000 Trump signs. This was a massive undertaking of at least 500 volunteers helping us all over the state, and it was an important one. Without doing this, we would have become the first state ever to use ranked choice voting in a presidential election. While the left claims that there is an effective way of voting, we all know this was truly about blocking the re-election of Donald J. Trump in the state of Maine. By the way, how beautiful is that? If we didn't stop ranked choice voting now and repeal this, it would spread to other states. We all knew it. The RNC knew this. And democracy as we know it would change. That's why it became very important to try to repeal and put our foot down on this bill. Despite rightfully collecting 72,000 signatures, Secretary of State Matt Dunlap pushed back. No surprise, right? Our Democrat Secretary of State Dunlap erroneously threw out 10,000 signatures of Maine voters to put us in the threshold that would not put us in the ballot. And here's the kicker. He did not notify us. That's right, despite repeated calls, me included, calling the office requesting an update on what was going on the 31st day. Remember, they only had 30 days to review the ballots. The Secretary of State went radio silent and instead put out a tweet after the close of the business day on the 31st day to notify the state they had thrown out 10,000 signatures. There was no explanation, and the calls were not returned. Who's shocked here? I'm not. Moreover, when we requested a review and appeal of the decision, we were supposed to have 10 days to scan the petitions, do our research, and find errors. However, we only had 5. Of course, due to the expensive CD2 election going to ranked choice voting, even though the other 2 candidates had conceded. But no, we had to go ranked choice voting. And that cost, of course, us tens of thousands of dollars. With our nation's national partners, we will be fighting back the allegations of error, giving our citizens of both sides of the aisle. We had independents and Democrats that helped us with ranked choice voting, allowing their signatures to be counted, because we truly believe ranked choice voter is a suppression of votes. We assembled an extraordinary team of attorneys, probably the top attorneys in the state, never mind the attorneys that flew here from Washington, D.C., and we have filed yesterday in state and federal court. I have already reached out to some of you who will be plaintiffs on these suits, because we just needed people who had either circulated or had signed the petitions to have standing. I appreciate the support and let you all know we will prevail on this issue. Thank you. Next, I'd like to talk about what happened 2 weeks ago. We had, again, as I said, it's probably the craziest time of my life. We had the first ever virtual convention. We waited and we waited and we waited, and the RNC finally said, guys, you have till July 11th to select your national delegates and alternate per RNC rules and state rules, so we can be compliant. Otherwise, we would not be able to deliver our delegates to our president. So as we got closer to July 11th, we realized time was running out. We had to do a virtual convention. None of us ever did a virtual convention. We had no clue. And people like me have no understand how the tech works anyways. I personally thought all the wires were like magic. I didn't understand it. But we had, thank God, enough people that could figure out how to do it. And we hired one of the best tech companies in the state of Maine to allow us to do a virtual convention. So as I said, those weeks were probably the busiest of my 3.5 years as chair. And I'm sure glad that the team at the Maine GOP of 4 people were able to pull this off, because we had great volunteers. We also have the Trump victory team that was right there helping us out. Many of your attendance and patience was so appreciated. We are now officially in compliance. The meeting that we had basically got us to be compliant with the RNC state rules and our convention rules, and of course the state of Maine. We have to be compliant with the state of Maine. So I can't thank you all enough. The convention in Charlotte has switched back and forth 10,000 times, I kid you not, and I just got the most updated agenda. And this has been difficult not only for us, for our national delegates and alternates that have worked so hard to get themselves elected, but for our president. He's itching to have a rally. He wants to be there for all of us, but he can't. And what he can't do is possibly infect one person, God forbid, with COVID, because it would come back and bite him. And that's what the biggest problem is. The convention will therefore be only from the 20th to the 24th in August in Charlotte, North Carolina. There will be no acceptance in Jacksonville that he had prayed to do, because now Florida's become a hot spot, and he doesn't want to hurt Florida. So obviously the Jacksonville acceptance and event has been canceled. Imagine, they spent over 100,000. I was on the coordination of arrangements for the convention. They spent over $100 million. I wrote down 100,000. That's error on my part. $100 million to get Charlotte ready to go, to no avail. We will not be having a big convention. All of us, which will be 6 out of every state that will be going, will have to be COVID tested before we even get there, and most likely COVID tested again once we get them a hotel room, and then we will not be allowed to leave the hotel room for 3 days. And again, that's because the Democrats are watching every move our president is making. Finally, I want to talk about an exciting event that happened last week. We had the Women for Trump that showed up in our state. And that's because Maine has become extremely important to the President of the United States. We're one of 20 targeted states in the country. We had Lara Trump, Mercedes Schlepp, who, if you all remember, was here the beginning of the year when we were able to get the 2,000 signatures to get our president on the ballot. Pam Bondi, who, by the way, is very interesting. She served with Janet Mills when she was the Attorney General in Florida, and they went on a trip to Israel together. And we informed you that Janet Mills has changed quite a bit from the time she knew her. And Katrina Pearson. Surprisingly, and I only found out the day before, they spent 4 hours at my house because they had no place to go from 1 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They were supposed to go to the Stars and Stripes in Freeport, but because of the bad publicity and the cancel culture, they got fearful and they canceled it. We were able to get Jimmy the Greeks in Orchard Beach, which I hope all of you would like to visit and give him some of your business to Jimmy the Greeks for doing what he did. But they spent 4 hours at my house because they had no place to go. Is that the craziest story ever? So they tried to hurt Jimmy the Greeks, and I'm proud to tell you that many Republicans, and that's who we are, bought food in the middle of the night through the internet and said, I will be paying for this food, but don't bother delivering it. I don't want the food. This is a donation to your establishment. So I'm honored that was going on, and my husband and I will be going there hopefully this weekend or next week to have a few beers and some food outside. They were thrilled. They had gone to Wisconsin and had a small group, not what they expected, and that was the beginning of their bus tour. Since we came out, and I think it was well over 100, I know the newspaper said 100, we think it was closer to 200. They were so thrilled. They are now officially saying to everybody that the bus tour started in Maine, and that's a big deal for us. Finally, I want to talk about the fact that our vice chair, Tommy Hicks from the RNC, is coming to Maine. The email just went out a few hours ago. He will be in in Lewiston on Lisbon Street at the barbecue pit. I hope I said that right, on Lisbon Street on the 11th, which is Tuesday. And again, he's coming in to meet the people, get to see our new candidate in CD2, and be basically showing his appreciation for the state and rallying up the troops. So I think Maine is a very important state. Stay tuned. We're going to need all hands on deck. We want to deliver. I would love to deliver all 4, but at least 3 electoral college votes to our president. And I think if we could do that, I think we'll push him over the top. Thank you. If anybody has questions, I'd be more than glad to entertain them.
What am I talking about? We are, me and Jack, hello. We are the Trump campaign for Cumberland County. I also cover York County as well. We're actually right here organizing, reaching out to all the Cumberland County candidates right now, planning some potluck meet and greets, field trainings for like door knocking, phone banking, and getting our candidates and town committees working together and involved at the doors and with the election. So if anyone wants to be involved with the local candidates, Susan Collins, Jay Allen, as well as President Trump, we'd love to have everyone involved. So.
And Marky and Jack are the best.
Marky forgot about one really big thing that we were doing. On Saturday, we're having our first official Maine Trump boat parade at Sebago Lake. So it started out actually at first at Little Ossipee, and it was only supposed to be about 10 to 15 boats. And once again, like the liberal media did with the Jimmy the Greeks event, they made it nice and popular, and they jumped down our throats very quickly. So, obviously, as the great patriots of Maine do, they rallied together. Now we have, close to 100 boats coming to Sebago Lake on Saturday. Really big event. It's going to be awesome. We have a couple vendors that are selling Trump merchandise that are coming to the Standish boat launch for the day. We're doing voter registration, flag wave, so it's going to be kind of like a big bash to welcome August into the next 100 days, last 3 months type of the election. So yeah, and if you don't have a boat, Harmon's Beach is open, and Janet Mills doesn't do a lot of great things, but yesterday she upped the public group to 100, so we're allowed to have 100 people on the beach. So if you would like to come, Harmon's Beach, if you don't have a boat, you can watch the parade from that area. So awesome. Thank you, guys.
We're going to have group Q&A for about 10 minutes or so. So if Rob can come up and Larry, then we'll have all four of us up here, and Natalie, you can give the microphone to anybody who has a question for any four of us. Right now it's 8:15, so we'll have about 10 minutes of that.
Can I make a quick comment?
Please, yes.
Zach, would you stand up? Anybody who wants to be on Maine First Project's email list, we've got a sign-up sheet. See the big guy back there who's waving his arm there. Thanks.
Any questions?
Can I have you come right up here, because the mic just doesn't extend quite that far. Thank
And
you.
whoever answers the question, come to the podium so that you can get on the camera.
What is Republican Party locally, nationally doing for misinformation given by Democratic candidates, elected officials that are telling lies about the country, lies about their candidates are running against them? How do we fight back?
So probably by August, September, we will be really working with leadership in the House and Senate to look at the different races, and we plan on we have a great team of folks. By the way, this will be the most money ever spent in the state in the history. We plan to, and I probably don't know all the numbers, we may have about 40 boots on the ground through the Trump Victory Team, which is unbelievable. They're working right now on just doing door-to-door campaign and voter registration, but we plan on doing a little research on the opponents, especially ones that we really do not want and we have a great chance of getting. And we're going to be working because we want the candidates to stay positive, and if there's any negative or things that we need to put out there, we'll take care of that. We're just going to do it probably in the late summer, fall, because if we do it now, a lot of folks are not thinking politically yet, and they're overwhelmed with COVID and the president and everything else. So we want to make sure we target it about the right time. But we're going to be working very hard. The president wants us to basically win the House and Senate along with Susan Collins, and obviously he wants to get the Electoral College votes. So he's putting the money in Maine.
Hi, I need to speak to you again. What are you doing about Sarah Gideon? I got pictures of the night of the election where she was handing out campaign literature just outside one of the polling booths. Are we doing anything about it? And also, my comment is, you're not alone. Michelle Melkin came up this winter, and we finally got her on the fourth venue, I believe it was, and it was all secretive. I got a call at 6:30 at night. We got there just in time. The house was full. We rocked the boat. So
Yes.
just so you'll know.
Yes, and I watched the whole thing on Facebook. It was my birthday. I was driving back from Skowhegan, and I was thinking it was going to be Thursday, and then of course it became Friday night. So yeah, it shifted quickly. Sarah Gideon, I filed a federal lawsuit on her campaign finance reports. I did it on behalf of the NRSC. Just to give you an idea, I did it personally, not as the Maine GOP. But because the legislature is not in session, They can't add the 5 people they need to be on the ethics board. One person at the very last minute, now I want you to know I canceled my patients in preparations for the hearing, practiced, worked with the attorneys of the NRSC. I'm ready to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, one of the 3 that are left decided to recuse herself because she had donated money. Now she knew that probably a month ago, but she turns around. It's a conspiracy, we know that. But the numbers that we're looking at is Collins is doing better. The Dylan Bates story has really, really hurt her. And we have another legislator that we know something about that will be coming out. We've already had a meeting with NRSC and we're working on that. We want to show the pattern that basically it's more important that she has the Democrats there to get the votes and to get what she wants done than it is to be concerned about the public and having people that maybe molest kids and are very inappropriate with women to be removed. So we're going to show the pattern and we're working with the Collins team. But I get it, totally.
I had a question for Mr. McCardle. I know that ICE has been very demonized. The police are being very demonized right now over the past, say, 4 to 5 years. Are you finding that Border Patrol is becoming more and more demonized, at least in the state of Maine?
We're definitely a political punching bag, so to speak. I mean, that's one of the reasons the union kind of exists, to be able to go out there and kind of get the truth out. The media sometimes portray exactly how they want it to look. But we've been a political punching bag as long as, you know, I've been around, and probably long before that. I'm sure we will be quite after I'm long gone. So, I mean, we do our job regardless.
I just wanted to ask if you think this might be helpful. This is what I'm doing to deal with all the people who hate the people that we like. People I'm friends with, I say, when they say something terrible about the president, like, did you see the stormtroopers that he's sending into Atlanta? I think in this way: say something polite and educate them and make it simple. You may get only one sentence. So I say, oh, my brother lives in Atlanta, and I was so glad Mr. Trump sent them in. You know, there's terrible riots. It's out of control, and the mayor isn't taking care of things. And then I stop. That's as best I can. You guys are the smart ones. We need ways to get back. And one thing I hear over and over from the media is that we don't push back. So I push back in that way. And I went to a reunion, and someone, this is years ago, and someone said, oh, Paul LePage in Maine, I hear he's awful. And I announced to my class alumni, I like him very much. That stopped the conversation, but it also took another side. I'd just like to know, do you think this is a way to do it, or I don't know what to do?
Yeah. Who were you addressing the question to?
Any of you. You're the expert.
All I can tell you, at least from my perspective, is in 16, when I became chair, I had very few people that would approach me and make any comments. Boy, it has changed. I have patients every day that come up to me. I have people that touch my shoulder in the street and go, isn't it awful what they're doing to the president? Or, thank God Paul LePage is running, we can't afford this. Or, my business, let's hope I can make it. I think there is a silent majority. I truly believe it. And I think these people are starting to slowly speak up. They're not afraid. And I know this is happening because my son was registered as an independent, and the other day told me he re-registered as a Republican, so he's had enough. That means something, I think.
So standing up,
absolutely. Not only should we stand up, we should say, don't you think enough is enough? And one of the security folks that was with the ladies for Trump the other day, he was a very tall black man, a very large man, and there were two kids. I think they're kids, because of my age, I suppose. And they had big signs that said Black Lives Matter. And he goes, excuse me, this is mine. And he went up to those kids and he said, back off, and by the way, which lives matter? Because you pick and choose which black lives you want to matter.
Right.
I would recommend just about any book by David Horowitz, but one in particular is actually called Fight Fire with Fire. We have the examples, successful examples, Paul LePage and Donald Trump.
Amen.
When you get punched, you punch back twice as hard.
And I'd like to mention that, as I said before, the left kind of owns the narrative now. And they accuse conservatives of being hateful and bigoted when someone saw the map that was on our flyer and said it was fear-mongering. That's not true. I have many relatives that are not Republicans. I don't know, do any of you have relatives who are not Republicans? Well, relatives are the hardest people in the world to deal with because you love them. But, you know, we just have to tell the truth. And David Horowitz is a wonderful resource. But, you know, we just can't be afraid any longer. Any other questions?
I would just like to add to that, flying American flags. Just fly a lot of American flags. Put up a bunch of Trump signs. You know, put it right in their face, right? Because you know they don't really like America, and they're not really flying American flags.
Right.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Or wear the MAGA hat everywhere you go. In fact, when I'm in Hannaford, I don't need a mask. Just the MAGA hat is enough to keep most people at a distance.
Good point.
Well, I just wanted to say, sometimes having something to say in response really does help. When I was first starting teaching, which was 1961, I taught with a black teacher. He became my best friend, and I saved his job, and I lost my job in the process of helping him. And he said this to me, I really owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and I owe a huge debt of gratitude to all white people. And I said, why? And he said, because we came here as slaves. We were sold as slaves. We were slaves in Africa. There is still slavery in Africa.
Yeah.
And the African slaves, the whites did not go into the jungle and get the slaves out. They were sold by the chiefs in the jungle. So they were already slaves, and he had done research, and he said they were so badly treated that they were happy to be sold into slavery to go to the white America. I don't think you read that in any history books, but that's the truth. And so he said, you actually freed us. You were the only people who actually freed us. So after we were slaves, you freed us. It wasn't blacks who wrote the Constitution. It was not blacks who decided every man could be equal. He said it was whites. So he said, I'm tired of people dumping on the whites. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, Natalie, could you give soon-to-be Congressman Jay Allen the mic? Dr. Allen, could you give us 1 minute of comment? And also, before that, I want to thank all these wonderful speakers. I want to say thanks to our co-sponsors and the Gray Republican Committee members who worked so hard on this project. the Twin City Times, who is our media partner. Lori Steele is the publisher of that paper. WLOB, the Ray Richardson Show. I had an interview Monday on that show. I want to thank Ray. We want to thank our 44 co-sponsors, including Demi Kazunis and the Maine GOP. And we had county committees, town committees, nonprofit groups, state representatives, the Fisherman's Net, the fish business in Gray. If you've not gone there to buy fish, now you have to go. And I want to thank Dave Langway, who's the manager of the Windham Veterans Center, for letting us have this event here. And thank all of you. So, Dr. Allen, if you could close us out with a minute, and then we'll be done. So, thank you.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Jay Allen. I'm a family doctor practicing in Waldoboro. And I'm also a combat veteran. I served 23 years in the Army. I deployed to Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq. I've had the opportunity to travel all over this world. And I want to tell you that America is a special place. There's no other place like it in the world. And if we open up our borders and just let anyone come in, we will lose what we have. We are ambassadors to the world. We can help the world, but we will be overwhelmed if we just open up our borders. And that's why it's important to have secure borders. That's why it's important to protect the goal, the ideal that is America, because this is something special that needs to be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give our speakers a big hand. God bless them. God bless all of you. Have a wonderful evening. We are adjourned.
There's still refreshments, right? Right. We need some help getting things put away here.